Welcome, football fans, to another episode of my 2025 NFL offseason review and NFL draft preview as we go over the AFC North Division here on Tim Reynolds Show. And please make sure, football fans, you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to continue to support one of the most badass, football-loving, electrifying sports entertainment channels on all of YouTube. And please check out more of my NFL content and more content on my YouTube channel. This is Tim Reynolds Show. Now let's go. And we kick things off here in the AFC North Division with the Baltimore Ravens, who have had a quiet offseason thus far, and they have not signed very many free agents here in the 2025 NFL offseason period, but they were able to sign some key free agents, including wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, as they're able to sign the veteran wide receiver to a one-year deal with a max value of $6 million. One hell of a bargain, if you ask me, for one of the best wide receivers in the game, especially for the Baltimore Ravens, who are in dire need of a number one wide receiver in this offense to help out quarterback Lamar Jackson. And if they get this number one wide receiver to play like he's supposed to, I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be the big addition here for the Baltimore Ravens heading into the 2025 NFL season. We also see the Baltimore Ravens were able to re-sign offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley to a 3-year, $60 million deal, and this is a big re-signing for them to be able to bring back one of the mainstays on that offense, but also a guy at tackle that's been one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL since he came into the league, as the Baltimore Ravens are able to keep offensive tackle Ronnie Stanley around for Baltimore and re-signing him on a 3-year deal. And we also see they bring back fullback Patrick Richard as they sign him to a 1-year fully guaranteed deal to bring back the fullback who's been one hell of a playmaker in that backfield for the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens were also able to add quarterback Cooper Rush, and they sign him to a 2-year deal worth up to $12 million or just over that, and he will now back up quarterback Lamar Jackson after backing up quarterback Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys over the last few years. And I think it was really messed up that the Dallas Cowboys didn't let Cooper Rush get his playing time incentive to be able to get his bonus at the end of the year when they decided to start Trey Lance over Cooper Rush at the end of the season for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think it's really cool to see Cooper Rush now with a new team, as he'll back up quarterback Lamar Jackson, and he definitely will be a good backup QB for that Baltimore Ravens offense. We also see the Ravens were able to re-sign offensive tackle Ben Cleveland as well, another offensive lineman that really will help out the depth there for that offensive line for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, as far as the draft needs for the Baltimore Ravens as they head into the 2025 NFL draft, I think key positions that the Ravens are going to be looking at on defense, I think they're going to be looking at the secondary, possibly cornerback or safety in the NFL draft to help improve that secondary for the Baltimore Ravens defense that was kind of lackluster, especially at the beginning of the season last year. And for the offense, I think the Baltimore Ravens should definitely be looking at the wide receiver position to upgrade that in the NFL draft, and also maybe even some more depth along the offensive line could really help improve this Baltimore Ravens offense going forward in the NFL draft. And I think the Baltimore Ravens are definitely one of those teams to look out for because they have 11 picks in the 2025 NFL draft. Ravens were also able to re-sign their head coach Harbaugh to a 3-year contract extension, which means now that these AFC North teams will have to deal with this head coach who's been one of the longest tenured head coaches in the NFL since he joined the Baltimore Ravens. A big contract extension done for the Ravens franchise. And next up, guys, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And guys, the Bengals have had quite an interesting offseason thus far, as they're finally able to get the contract extensions done for wide receiver Jamar Chase and wide receiver T. Higgins, as they finally get these deals done, especially with the season that we've seen wide receiver Jamar Chase have last year. Well, he finally gets the deal that he deserves, a 4-year, $161 million contract extension, as we will see wide receiver Jamar Chase in a Cincinnati Bengals uniform for years to come. And we also see wide receiver T. Higgins re-signed on a 4-year, $115 million deal earlier in the offseason after the Cincinnati Bengals franchise tagged the wide receiver for the second straight year. But now it looks like wide receiver T. Higgins and wide receiver Jamar Chase finally get the contract extensions that they've been looking for and that they deserve. But we also see on the offensive side of the ball, the Cincinnati Bengals were also able to re-sign tight end Tanner Hudson on a 1-year deal and re-sign tight end Mike Gesicki on a 3-year, $25.5 million deal with $12 million in the first year, as tight end Mike Gesicki has really taken a step up in his career since he came to the Cincinnati Bengals with quarterback Joe Burrow, and I expect Mike Gesicki to continue to improve at that tight end position for the Cincinnati Bengals offense. They also were able to add some more depth along the offensive line, re-signing offensive lineman Cody Ford on a 2-year contract, and also bringing in offensive guard Lucas Patrick on a 1-year deal. And the defense, which was the big problem last year for the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, they had an offense that could compete with anybody in the league, but this defense was so bad last year, that's what pretty much kept the Cincinnati Bengals out of the playoffs last season. So as we see the moves that they made here in the 2025 NFL offseason, they were able to re-sign edge rusher Joseph Osai on a 1-year, $7 million deal, and also able to re-sign defensive end Can Sample on a 1-year deal as well. They also re-signed defensive lineman BJ Hill, who's been a big part of that defensive line over the last few years, to a 3-year, $33 million contract extension, and also bring in some help signing defensive lineman TJ Slayton, who played for the Green Bay Packers, on a 2-year deal worth just over $15 million, and he should definitely help improve that defensive line play for that defense for the Cincinnati Bengals. They also signed linebacker Owen Burks on a 2-year, $5 million deal, and as we preview the draft needs for the Cincinnati Bengals, I think on defense, they need improvements at every position in this 2025 NFL draft, but I think the key positions they'll look at will be at the linebacker position to help them get a little bit younger and more athletic at that position on defense. And as far as the offense goes, I think the Cincinnati Bengals will be looking to add another weapon at running back for this high-powered offense, and we'll be looking at some depth along the offensive line in the 2025 NFL draft. And those are the draft needs that I think the Cincinnati Bengals really need to focus on heading into the 2025 NFL draft. And then coming up next, guys, we got the Cleveland Browns. And what a tough season last year was for Cleveland Browns fans, and it's been even a tougher offseason thus far because we haven't seen the Cleveland Browns make very many big moves here that could really help improve this roster here in this 2025 NFL offseason. But we see the Cleveland Browns were able to bring in veteran quarterback Joe Flacco on a 1-year, $4 million deal. Now, Joe Flacco was the quarterback just a few years ago that led this Cleveland Browns team to the playoffs without quarterback Deshaun Watson. So, with quarterback Deshaun Watson expected to miss most of the 2025 NFL season with that Achilles tear injury, it looks like the veteran Joe Flacco has a chance at being the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback once again. He won the comeback player of the year in the NFL that year he played with this Cleveland Browns team just a few years back. But we also see the Cleveland Browns offense also added another quarterback, trading for quarterback Kenny Pickett, acquiring him in a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles, as they also send quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson to the Philadelphia Eagles, and a 2025 5th-round pick to acquire the quarterback from the Eagles, as it looks like Kenny Pickett may have a chance at being a starting quarterback once again, as it looks like he will compete with quarterback Joe Flacco for that starting quarterback spot here in Cleveland for this offense. But I think that head coach Kevin Stefanski is going to probably go with the veteran Joe Flacco, especially with how successful Joe Flacco was in this offense just a few years back. We also see that on the offensive side of the ball, the Cleveland Browns were also able to bring in wide receiver DeAndre Carter on a 1-year deal, and also bring in a couple of offensive linemen. But the moves made on defense were the big moves for the Cleveland Browns here this offseason, as they were able to re-sign defensive end and edge rusher Myles Garrett. One of the best pass rushers in the NFL today gets a huge 4-year contract extension worth $123 million guaranteed, and this will now pay him an average salary per year of $40 million, which made him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. This is a huge deal for the Cleveland Browns franchise to be able to get done after Myles Garrett actually requested a trade during the start of the 2025 NFL offseason, but now he gets this huge deal done with Cleveland, and he will be tied to the Cleveland Browns franchise for the next 6 years on this huge contract extension. We also see on defense, the Cleveland Browns were able to bring in edge rusher Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who formerly played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as they signed him to a 1-year deal worth just under $5 million. They're also able to sign defensive lineman Mikael Collins on a 2-year, $20 million deal with $13 million guaranteed. They also signed linebackers Jerome Baker and also linebacker Devin Bush, who signs a 1-year deal worth just over $3 million with just under $3 million guaranteed for the standout linebacker that used to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this same division. But now Devin Bush is a Cleveland Brown, and as far as the 2025 NFL draft needs for the Cleveland Browns, I think they're going to be looking at the defense mostly, but man, they need a lot right now for this Cleveland Browns franchise to complete this roster. So they got needs on both sides of the ball that they're really going to need to look at. And on defense, I think they really need to look at the linebacker position, and also help improve that secondary a little bit would be nice for the Cleveland Browns defense. I think they're good at pass rush with Myles Garrett. Garrett on that defensive line. And I think Joe Tryon-Shoyinka really helps bring in another big pass rusher for this Cleveland Browns defense. And defensive lineman Collins also brings in another veteran presence along that defensive line as well. So as far as the offensive needs for the Cleveland Browns, I think they're going to be looking at offensive linemen. They haven't really been able to stay healthy along the offensive line over the last few years, and they do need playmakers, not only at the running back position, but also at the wide receiver position. They're pretty set at tight end, and I don't expect the Cleveland Browns to draft a quarterback, but that could be one of their needs that they look at in later rounds from reports that I'm hearing. Watch out for the Cleveland Browns in this 2025 NFL draft because everything seems to be up in the air for them, and who knows what they're thinking at pick number 2 overall, where we could see the Cleveland Browns draft Abdul Carter, who's a premier pass rusher from Penn State, or possibly a generational talent in a defensive back / wide receiver, the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter. So hopefully we'll be able to see who the Cleveland Browns are able to choose with that 2nd overall pick. And guys, up next we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. And guys, we see the Pittsburgh Steelers have had a busy offseason thus far, but their big move was acquiring wide receiver DK Metcalf in a trade with the Seattle Seahawks, as we see the Steelers send over a 2025 second-round pick in the deal to get the wide receiver from Seattle, and DK Metcalf also signs a 4-year, $132 million contract extension as he will be a Pittsburgh Steeler for years to come. And this is a huge move made by the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise as they finally get a big playmaking wide receiver to go in this offense with wide receiver George Pickens. And continuing with the offense, we see that quarterback Mason Rudolph returns to the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 2-year, $8 million deal with $4.5 million guaranteed, as it looks like quarterback Mason Rudolph could compete for that starting quarterback position because right now he's really the only quarterback they got on the roster. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are still waiting to see if free agent veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers is going to return for another NFL season, and whether or not he will sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers has yet to be determined, although all reports are saying that Aaron Rodgers is the guy, is the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get this offseason. But we'll see what they do here in the 2025 NFL draft at that quarterback position. We also see on offense the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to sign wide receiver Scotty Miller and wide receiver Ben Skoranek. They also bring in tight end Darnold Pham Jr. on a 1-year deal, and on that defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're able to sign defensive lineman Mekhi Harrison to a 2-year, $10 million deal. They also bring in veteran cornerback Darius Slay on a 1-year, $10 million deal, and he should definitely help improve that secondary for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They also re-sign cornerback James Pierre and also sign cornerback Braden Eccles to a 2-year deal as well in free agency, and we're also able to bring in safety Juwan Thornhill on a 1-year deal as well, as they look to keep this defense as good as it was last year that helped them on their playoff run. But the big acquisition here for the Pittsburgh Steelers is wide receiver DK Metcalf, but how big is it? Well, we don't know because we don't know who the starting quarterback's going to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. If it is Mason Rudolph, it's going to be a tough year for the Pittsburgh Steelers fans and for that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So I'm really hoping that we will see quarterback Aaron Rodgers be a part of this Pittsburgh Steelers franchise and sign with the team, hopefully for what will be his last season. We're not sure, but I know one thing. I don't think quarterback Aaron Rodgers wants to go out like that, like he did with the New York Jets. So I think that he would be a very good fit for head coach Mike Tomlin and his Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But as far as the draft needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers, as we preview the 2025 NFL draft for the Steelers, I think the positions of need that they're going to need to look at on the defensive side is going to be at linebacker and defensive line. They need to get a little bit younger at the position and start getting some more guys to be able to build their character and build their play behind the veterans like a Cam Hayward and a TJ Watt, which actually some big news that we're hearing out of Pittsburgh is reportedly that pass rusher TJ Watt is at a standstill right now in contract extension talks, and I don't know what that means, but man, could this mean that TJ Watt might not be a Pittsburgh Steeler going forward? We'll wait and see, but I have to imagine that the Pittsburgh Steelers are gonna get a deal done, a contract extension done with a premier pass rusher in TJ Watt. And as far as their offensive needs in the 2025 NFL draft, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers need to look at quarterback because they need to find a guy who is gonna be the up and comer, the franchise quarterback of the future for the Pittsburgh Pittsburgh Steelers. And even though they drafted Kenny Pickett, a top 20 pick a couple of years ago, that just didn't work out. So they really need to try to explore the QB options in this draft, and maybe if it's not the first round, maybe the second or third or the later rounds, be able to draft a quarterback that they believe can sit behind Aaron Rodgers and learn a few things and possibly be a franchise quarterback for this Pittsburgh Steelers team, because the franchise needs it desperately. They have needed a franchise quarterback for years, since quarterback Ben Roethlisberger retired from the Pittsburgh Steelers years ago. And guys, I really do think that this Pittsburgh Steelers offense could use some more playmakers, but I really do think they're going to look at offensive line as well to help improve that offensive line depth that they have for that Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Now, I think they'll definitely prioritize a quarterback, but that's not Pittsburgh Steelers' MO to do that. So look out for them to possibly just pick the best available player, but maybe in the later rounds, looking at that quarterback position to try to find that guy that could sit behind a veteran and learn a thing or two and be the next franchise quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it seems like they've been looking for one forever, but at least they're not the Cleveland Browns, who've been looking for a franchise quarterback for forever, from what it seems like. But guys, this has been your 2025 NFL offseason review and 2025 NFL draft preview for the AFC North Division right here on Tim Reynolds Show. Thank you, football fans, for hanging out on the channel. Thank you for all your love and support. Please make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to continue support one of the football awesome channels here on YouTube. It's Tim Reynolds Show, and please help support more of my NFL content and check out more of my content on my YouTube channel. This has been Tim Reynolds Show. Peace out, everybody. Have a great day.